once again. Good hello. Thanks for joining us. Another edition of Educate Roy. Well, no, the series we call is Serving the Valley. And, well, it is a little bit of Educate Roy, because purposely I enter this program not knowing a whole lot, which is pretty easy for me. But we have something called Grow Cedar Valley that we're planting a few seeds for in the next several minutes, and you're invited to come along for the ride. This state, of course, as you well know, is known for growing things. We grow great crops. We also happen to produce some pretty nice leadership, particularly here in the Cedar Valley. How was that? Was that pretty good?
Very good.
That's good? Okay, just like they paid me to say. Carrie Dara has joined us. At least she's going to stick around for a while, as long as Roy behaves himself. Carrie is the president and CEO of what we now know as Grow Cedar Valley. And joining her, Aaron Jernigan is here. He is, well, he's director of marketing, that's the title, but this is kind of part of what he likes to do. And we've brought him along because he likes to do it. Welcome to our program.
Thank you
so much.
I want to start with, we planted a few seeds here not too long ago called Grows the Cedar Valley, but it was known something else. There were some, well, it's got a history, let's put it that way. Who's going to tackle that? Where did the history, I don't know if you have to go all the way back to the beginning, but it had a few other titles.
Absolutely. And I'll be glad to start it, and Aaron can chime in, and you're
Great.
absolutely
and I'll
welcome
go out
to.
for coffee.
Yeah, no, we need you here, right?
I see.
So, yes, you're right. So we started with another name of our organization, and then along the way we merged other organizations under our umbrella. So we started as the Greater Cedar Valley Alliance in the early 2000s.
Okay.
And that was a creation and a project and a subject that was pulled together with then President Bob Koob at UNI and Mike Triplett from John Deere, and then we also had Ken Lockhart, who was a local business leader, and recognizing the need that Waterloo and Cedar Falls are autonomous, they're really strong communities on their own, but we really need to be seen as a region. We need to be seen as not two separate organizations or two communities, but one voice for Northeast Iowa and for the Cedar Valley region. So with that, the Greater Cedar Valley Alliance was created. And then a few short years later, the Waterloo and Cedar Falls Chambers of Commerce merged together as one, as you know. And then about another, yes, you do know very well with your brother. And thanks to Bob, there was great leadership involved in making that merger. And Bob then was the chair of both the Waterloo Cedar Falls Chambers. And then very quickly after that, that organization came under the umbrella of the Greater Cedar Valley Alliance and then was called the Greater Cedar Valley Alliance and Chamber for about the next 10 years. We realized that with many other organizations and communities, that we were due for a refresh, a reboot, and so we then rebranded ourselves. So we really are the same strength of all of those organizations that came together, but we recognized that we still needed to be seen as one clear voice. And therein came the rebranding, and we're now Grow Cedar Valley. So we're basically the regional economic development and community development, or former Chamber of Commerce organization, all pulled into one.
Gotcha. So what, Aaron, was the biggest challenge?
Yeah, the biggest challenge in rebranding is just being involved with so many people, so many different communities. It's getting and putting together what that looks like in a very succinct message. And that's why we came up with the name Grow Cedar Valley, just because it's very clear. The mission is there, the motivation is there. And so it was a challenge, but also a great opportunity to meet with a ton of different stakeholders, ones that were very, very involved, and then maybe ones that weren't as involved, just to get this clear picture of how our organization was perceived, what our strengths were, and where we need to be, in the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Everything was going just fine about, a little over a year ago, and then something happened, and a lot of people shut a lot of things up. Well, we know what happened. We were wearing masks. What was the challenge like to market an organization when so-called, the rules were there about meeting and events, and that was a challenge as well, was it not, Aaron?
Yeah, really great question. And what I think is so encouraging about the opportunity to work for Grow Cedar Valley is that even though the situation changed, the mission didn't. So even though it looked a little bit different in the way that we were operating or the way that we were working, promoting events, none of that changed really in terms of the mission base. Businesses still were coming across barriers, but the barriers were just a little bit different. So not your traditional growth barriers. Now you have this thing called the pandemic that everybody was facing. So instead of giving them recruitment resources or providing some of these traditional things, instead it was how do we encourage local shops to get an online web presence so they could sell their gifts online, open up great platforms that allow them to like for restaurants to offer to-go orders. Just different, like a way to look at business differently is really what we were providing. Still back to that core mission of reducing barriers to business growth.
I'm extremely proud of this team because it was for the sake of not having to use the word pivot overly. I mean, everybody's sad of some of the situations, and we know it was a very, very painful time, but our team really stepped up quickly to make sure that we connected the resources that were available to our businesses, our business community, and our nonprofits, and how they could access them. And not everyone was able to qualify for that, but we worked very, very hard to make sure that all of the information that we could get a hold of, we got in front of the folks that needed to make decisions, to make changes, and to keep their head above water.
Well, one thing, I don't know if it's positive or negative, but it was, and that's the point. You weren't alone.
No. Not at all.
You were not alone.
So we learned together with a lot of other communities. We worked closely with the state. We worked close with our congressional offices in Washington, D.C. And I would tell you that there wasn't partisan at all about making sure that we got information as clearly and concisely and quickly to our stakeholders.
Well, the challenges haven't stopped because time marches on. I wanted to allow time, and in fact, I'll tell the control room now, I think we're going to use that little tape right about here.
Awesome.
Because back when things were a little more normal before the pandemic happened, there were a lot of things going on. And there's a little bit of that in a little bit of this. So watch this. So there's a little bit of that. There was a whole lot more, but in the time allowed, that gives you a little sampling. We mentioned, you mentioned, I'm mentioning partnerships. That's a key in what's going on with Grow the Valley, if you will. Define it for me.
Well, Aaron will want to chime in, I know, but I will tell you that one of my, and people are tired of me saying this, but one of our claims is that Grow Cedar Valley does not have to own everything. We do, though, have a responsibility to support the good things that are going on and whatever we can do to make connections so that those great ideas, great projects can continue and grow. That is not only our responsibility, but that's our pure joy in doing and making sure that the outcomes from those collaborations are relevant, recognized, and really respected. So, but as you mentioned, the partnerships is exactly what is key. And we did that through the pandemic, but long before that, we were all about making sure that the collaborative environment was really growing. And it was a very comfortable place for us to be, where all of us on the team are used to establishing great relationships and nurturing those and making sure that we're reliable on our end and making sure that we come through for folks.
And once again, another challenge for Aaron.
Yeah, just to echo what Carrie's saying, partnerships are key. I mean, you're looking at an organization founded on partnering together, and that's just across every aspect of the work that we do, whether it's business development, talent attraction, talent development. The example of why regionalism is so important, especially with a community like ours that's so unique with being so close together, is when you start looking at our community as a region, now you're not just looking at the benefits of one city when you're trying to attract, let's just say, somebody to a company here or trying to attract a company to do business here. Now you have all of the amenities and all of the assets of all of these communities in this area. And so we look at that from our community here. There's a ton of great things, but then even we have partners in the surrounding counties that then are able to talk about, they have this airport that's here, they have all these great hospitals that's here, these great education systems. And so with the idea of regionalism and partnerships, the opportunities just multiply very quickly. And going back to this past year, while the mission didn't change, just the way that we did things was a little bit different. It was awesome because we were able to leverage partnerships so that businesses could do better. Just going back to the examples of like doing takeout or just working remotely. How does that work? Does anybody have best practices? I can't tell you how many times that we were asked to look over a survey or to create a survey for businesses to gauge where their employees were at with things going on. And then businesses would then ask, do you have examples of this? And we were able to connect with others, get those examples, and then provide them. And that's just what's been a lot of fun this past year and just very encouraging for our business and our community.
Yep.
In the programs I've done in this series that we're doing right now in this Serving the Valley series, I haven't heard too many people say this has been fun.
It's been
good to see a
rewarding. I
smile.
will tell you, it has been rewarding to know
That too.
that what we're
Sure.
working towards and working with everyone has been very, very rewarding.
Great.
And I think we've just been very blessed in this community, just with the support that's here. And I just think that goes back to our roots as an organization, but also just shows the type of people that are here. And also that's another thing that's great about this organization is the folks that we work with all see the same mission and vision of that. We want to see our community a little bit better. We want our businesses to be a little bit better and our people. And that also is very encouraging and rewarding.
I want to get into, we haven't got time to go through all the systems or committees or
Sure.
various parts of the organization, but there are a few that stick out to me, and one is called governmental affairs. A big topic, constantly needing attention, even when the legislature is not doing what they do. Explain that to me. How will what you do get involved in what they do?
Sure. And I'm glad you brought that up because as Aaron mentioned earlier, we had focus groups as we were going through our rebranding. And the two topics that came up most clearly in that were highest priority for many of our businesses were advocacy or the government relations. And interestingly enough, the airport. Because that is a definite economic development driver. So where are we with our airport? How are we going to strengthen the use of our airport?
Right,
And so that has a subcommittee that we may or may not get to today. But the government affairs and the advocacy piece really was strengthened too. It's always been in front of what we do, and our government affairs director is Steve Furman, and he was with the Cedar Falls Chamber in that role, and then with the combined chambers, and then stayed on through the alliance, and now with us. So we've got that constant image of what the history of our government affairs, where we are currently, and then more importantly, the vision of where government affairs can be. So Steve leads us with those conversations. Again, relationships have been critical because we have relationships with our legislators and our congressional representatives and staff. A lot of that is with Steve's hand in making sure that they see the same face, they have the same voice, they have the same background information about our organization that they've had for the last 20 years. And so government affairs right now, as you know, and throughout the year with the legislative process, we keep in very close touch with our area legislators, but we also serve on the statewide organization that represents the largest peer groups or chambers of commerce across the state of Iowa. And there we bounce all kinds of ideas off each other about how do we strengthen the legislative outcomes that will be good for business in Iowa. And many times we're successful because we come together, and when we're not successful, it's our obligation to explain to our businesses how this is going to affect them. What can we do to work through some of these legislative decisions, positive or not so good for business? We still have a responsibility to make sure that our businesses are prepared. And so that is where the government affairs piece comes in.
You mentioned the airport. I'm thinking almost anything I'm thinking about now always comes back to money. There's some things you can control, and there's some things that some would say is a bit out of control. On the other hand, how do you get your message across to those who are in control? That's done through that committee?
That and our many relationships, and then that's where I think the influence that we've worked really hard to have a respectable presence and respectful relationships, and then our influence on some of these decisions is really paid attention to. So yes, it comes from that committee and others, but with regard to the airport, so Erin's working hard with other regional leaders that know how important it is for our airport to be reliable, have reliable service and expanded service if possible. And so we recognize that our businesses are relying on that connection. And so again, it comes from several different avenues, but government affairs is certainly one of those important ones.
And
Well,
government affairs is a great example of how important it is with partnerships. And she mentioned it, so I won't go too deep into it. But the unified voice comes back up, whether it's from our region, and that's when we go to the state level.
Yes.
They know, and just as Carrie mentioned, we have those relationships. They know that if we're, pressing on something or asking questions about something, that it's not just us by ourselves asking. It's us and then our business community who have voiced an interest or a concern or an interest in what they're talking about, and so that's been very important to us, and that's what's allowed us to do so well in that realm. And it's very encouraging this year. One of the good things that's actually come out of this season is we've transitioned some of our events to being virtual rather than in person. So of course, not all of them, we'd prefer to be that way, but one of them that's been very successful is our Friday forums. And so once a month we get businesses together, and Steve, our Director of Government Affairs, gets with them and they have a topic to discuss. And I think previously, attendance was good.
We would have liked a dozen people.
We'd like it to be a little bit more, and I think we've probably averaged about 40 or 50 business heads or business professionals joining in on the conversation just because now it's more convenient. And so that's something that I don't think we're going to change moving forward.
Well, and the other beauty of that is that, so we had one month we had Rob Sand, the state auditor. Another month we had our lobbyist in Des Moines, Dustin Miller from IC, Iowa Chamber Alliance. We had our local representatives. So those Friday forums are directed to legislative and government affairs issues. And so we've been able to access having those folks join us in presentations because it is virtual. Now you don't have to get up at 6 in the morning or 5 in the morning and get up there and actually those meetings are usually at 7:30 or 8, and so many times it pretty much excluded some of those voices that we really wanted to feature at the Friday Forum, but now that we do it virtually. So we've talked about that, not unlike many businesses, we will have a hybrid version of how we do business moving forward and how we access our businesses moving forward. So our community development, our Chamber of Commerce, our networking events will go back to being in person because that's very, very important for people to have that connectivity. But some of our administrative meetings, our board meeting, our Friday forums, our town hall meetings where we bring in Dr. Nafisa Bonnier from the Blackhawk County Health Department, those will likely remain virtual because we can get information to people quicker and to a bigger audience.
Positive lessons learned there.
Absolutely.
For sure. Again, you're not alone in that regard. Business is going to be a little different as we move ahead, for sure.
Absolutely.
We've talked about some specifics of what the organization is doing. Let's talk about the people of the organization and how you are helping develop more leadership within the Cedar Valley. Well, give me an example of that.
You want to talk about the Cedar Valley Leadership
Sure,
Institute?
I'll start, and again,
Okay.
we tag team really well.
I could step out the
So
coffee.
no, we need you, Roy. But so on our team internally, we have the best of the best. Our economic development team leader, Lisa Skubel, has more than 20 years of experience, was named one of the best economic development professionals in North America about a handful of years ago. I mean, so we have the best of the best representing the priorities of our organization, but that's internal. Our external outreach with leadership, we have facilitated the Cedar Valley Leadership Institute for the last couple decades. And in fact, my meeting yesterday with another local business leader was he sends at least 2 or maybe 3 representatives from his large company through that institute every year. And he said every single person has come back and learning more, being more committed to the Cedar Valley, and that's exactly what I tell this class when we're getting together. I said, the goal of this class is for you to learn more about the Cedar Valley. It's for you to really understand who you're serving and who you can reach out to with the needs you may have. But the thing I want to most impress upon you is if you ever have an opportunity to leave the Cedar Valley, I want it to be the hardest decision you've ever made. I don't want that to be an easy decision to go somewhere else because you've learned so much and you've become so committed to where we are.
Yeah, I just, to echo what she says, and the reason why I decided to continue working here was just the professionalism and the expertise of the people on our team. So Lisa, our director of economic development, was my boss coming in, and I started as an intern, and I cannot tell you how awesome it was to serve under her and to continue to serve under her. Just her experience, her knowledge, her interest in growing and developing opportunities for the Cedar Valley is just amazing, and it really, when I was coming on as an intern, this was a very new world for me. I graduated from UNI with a digital marketing degree. I always joked that I thought I was going to sell toys on the internet. But here I am, representing a community in a region. But it was through conversations with her and seeing her passion for her work that I was able to be like, wow, this is awesome. And then also, like Carrie was mentioning with CVLI, I don't think it takes very long for somebody to realize what's going on. If they take a look around, learn a little bit more, that passion and that pride can really start to come out, and we can make it pretty tough for folks to leave.
Oh, and I want to add to, so when Aaron was an intern with us, and when we realized that he was becoming quickly an integral part of our team, and we could grow and really serve our constituents much better and our stakeholders with his involvement. And so when he and I talked, and he said, I always imagined I'd leave the Cedar Valley when I graduated from UNI. And he said, but because of this position and what I've been able to witness and be involved in, I really want to stay. And I said, that's exactly what I want you to push out through our Live the Valley.
Sure.
So, and Aaron is the project lead for our Live the Valley efforts. And I said, what you learned, the passion that you have, I want you to be able to quantify and push out through our Live the Valley publications and our website. And you may want to touch on that too, because that's just a really big piece of what we do with community development.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was my internship when I started. I believe it was Talent Solutions Marketing Intern, and they had this brand called Live the Valley. And really how it started was when a larger business was looking at landing here, they wanted to develop a web page that the business could be directed to that would have some information, talk a little bit about the community. And really it was a great starting point. And so for me to come in, I had this marketing degree, I had this interest, I love making content, I love measuring metrics, and so digital marketing allows me to do all that. So I came in and was really just given a big sandbox to play with, and this mission of let's make it really hard for people to leave, and let's really encourage folks who aren't here or were from here to come back and join in. And so from there we built a really robust website that just talks about all the great things in the Cedar Valley, what the Cedar Valley is, what opportunities there are. Kind of the three things we focus on are people, place, and opportunities, because we believe in a great community, there's beautiful people, great places, and amazing opportunities. That's just the whole kind of wide spectrum that we look at. But a fully robust website, we keep it updated with fun content. Like there's, I just think it's so important when you're promoting a community that you involve the community in that promotion. I've just seen so many other communities, what they'll do is they'll send out messaging, advertising, say it's either on the internet or in magazines, but they don't involve the community. So I call it this kind of umbrella strategy, where you kind of pull it up and it's almost like you spin it to get the raindrops off, and you're just shooting out all this messaging. But then what happens is then it's not like, I'm trying to think of the word to describe, it's not endorsed by your community. And so for us, as we were building this website, we also put together a magazine, and we also have an active social media presence. It's very important for us that we connect with our community first. Okay. So we put together fun content like top 50 date ideas, or like first date ideas, or like places to go to take fun pictures, with the idea being that we can try and advertise to people ourselves, but if we can get the community involved and they share that content, they send that content to a friend or a family member, that's going to be far more effective. So instead of just us trying to send out and convince people to come here, if we can just get every single community member involved, engaged, they can help us with some of that work, and we've seen a lot of success with that.
And as you'll see, it reaches over 1 million people. So
yes.
The views have been pretty comprehensive and pretty impressive.
And that's
as we're producing this program, we kind of stay away from calendar items because you may be watching this a few months after it has been produced. But something that does tie into what you just mentioned, Aaron, is the buzzwords of today seem to be diversity and inclusion. So how do you work that into what you were just talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about diversity and inclusion, we talk about our community, it's really representing all of the great things that we have to offer here. And that's one of the great things about our community is that's something that we get to focus on in the work that we do. So each year we host a diversity, equity, and inclusion conference. The team's actually getting together to work on that right now. And it's just, and the focus that we take with that is the business approach, because that's our focus, is from the business side. And so it's understanding, we have a lot of great people here with a lot of amazing abilities, and so how can businesses, learn and adapt to encourage those folks to come here, to be able to take advantage and harness those skills, and really then allow for a great impact. And also it's kind of interesting right now too, you know, unfortunately we've seen some businesses go through some hard times and have to adjust based on talent. And actually going back to that legislative or our government affairs, each year at the beginning of the year we always send out a survey to businesses. You know, what are your top legislative priorities this year? And always at the very top is talent attraction and development.
Sure.
That's just on the mind of all. That's just on the mind of all businesses. And so one of the approaches to that, and that's a multifaceted issue. I mean, you're talking about development, you're talking about pipeline building of future talent, and then you're also talking about attraction. But the diversity and inclusion part of it is, you know, how can we encourage more folks with various abilities, various backgrounds, various languages? How can we get them to be a part of your business and harness their abilities to make your business a little bit better? Because not all businesses are at that point yet. So if we can encourage you with some great material, give you resources and tools to make you a little bit better, that's our goal, and that's what that conference is all about.
And I would tell you, so Aaron touched on it, but many of our businesses, it's not that they're averse to diversity and inclusion, but where do I start? I mean, how do, I mean, this is just, it's not necessarily new information, but how do I embrace this and have it be authentic to our organization? And so we work really hard to put together toolboxes and resources and connections so that our businesses do make that progress and that progressive step for them in the right way. So as Aaron mentioned, for us at Grow Cedar Valley, I mean, diversity, equity, inclusion is important for a lot of reasons, and it's the right thing to do for a lot of reasons. But for us, it's the business case. I mean, we, as Aaron mentioned, that workforce and talent is an issue for every single business, every industry. And so our ability to be able to help strengthen our workforce and our talent, we can't do it without including everyone in our economy. And we need the contributions of everyone of all abilities to be able to help all of our organizations and businesses grow.
And Will Frost, our Director of Talent Development, has really done an amazing job pulling in a ton of different resources, because there's a lot of great folks out there doing the good work, and bringing them all together so that we can have a really positive impact and big impact on our community.
Absolutely.
We have just a little over a minute left, but gee, Roy, why didn't you ask me about fill in the blank? Why didn't you ask me about what?
Oh, I think you've done a great job. I mean, we've touched on our priorities, you know, with diversity, equity, and inclusion, government affairs, workforce, and talent is the biggest obstacle for our businesses right now. So I think we've touched on almost everything. But on the fun side of things, we do every year have our annual celebration, which recognizes the nominations and the winner, or I hate to say winners because they're all winners, but those who are recognized in the different levels of growth that they've had. And so we look forward to that every single year, celebrating with our area businesses and organizations about how they've grown and how they've really contributed to the Cedar Valley. So our annual celebration is what we look forward to and invite all to participate in and help us celebrate.
So on the web, speaking of social media and so forth, how do people stay in touch with Grow Cedar Valley?
Yeah, great question. We really encourage to follow us on social media. That's the easiest and quickest way to see what's going on, learn more about what we're working on. Also, we have a very active blog on our website. We love to share announcements and releases, especially those related to businesses. They're doing great things, finding success in what they're working on, having positive impacts. So if you follow Grow Cedar Valley on social media, we're on all of them. And then also visit our website, growcedarvalley.com. That's a great way to stay connected.
I'm sorry, folks. I thought I'd get some people who could talk a little bit.
Or had some exciting
give us
things
some
to say.
information. I know. Terry, thank you very much.
Oh, thank
Aaron,
you.
thank you for joining us. Thank you as well for joining us. Again, your attention has been, well, thanks. Until the next time, Serving the Valley, I'm Roy Justice.